Rings of Power Season 2 is here, and you know what that means, folks. Long-winded episodes where nothing happens, mystery boxes with unsatisfying endings, lore breaks that were never in the professor's original works and go against the very books that inspired the show itself. You'll get that and more this season of Rings of Power. Hello, my friends, and welcome to The Pondering. I am the real-life fake wizard. If this video gives you any value at all, I invite you to subscribe to this channel where we're posting new videos nearly every day. Let's cover some bases here. I've seen episodes 1 and 2 so far. I have yet to see 3. By the end of episode 2, I texted a close friend saying, in all caps, this episode just won't end. So no, I have not tuned in for episode 3 yet. Here are some of my first impressions about this show as someone who, while not being a lawmaster directly, knows enough about this era to know when Amazon is messing up. Many mistakes from season 1 certainly carry over, like the absolute bastardization of Sauron. See, in the books, the Peter Jackson films, and even the video games, Sauron is not really present. He's not there. Like, he's there, but the audience, and more so the heroes, don't see him often. He serves the story better as a mysterious being that is unknown and therefore unpredictable. Think about it. In the Peter Jackson films, Sauron is mentioned a lot. Everyone is afraid of him, that he could be lurking around the corner, a boogeyman. And if he himself is not scary enough, he commands his all-loyal orcs, the Nazgul. Even the men have sworn allegiance to him, and he's convinced a wizard to defect and join him, all of which will kill anything that stands in their way without fathoming the thought of mercy. All of those contribute to the idea of Sauron. The idea of Sauron is more terrifying than the man itself. This show undermines that in every possible way. Classic line from Iron Man 2, if you can make God bleed, people will cease to believe in him. Well, reducing Sauron down to a guy, who we'll see in a minute, is betrayed by the orcs and murdered, a guy written to have a will they, won't they with Galadriel, a guy who feels very vulnerable. Halbrand is just a man, and Sauron shouldn't be just a man. Also, the show's world itself exists within the context of Sauron the idea. But as an audience, we're watching Halbrand kiss the boots of his enemies, though it doesn't work. The Nazgul moth women from season 1 are back, and they seem to be working with some dark wizard coven. To my knowledge, none of this is in the books, but these moth people talk about Sauron like they're either in league with him or wish to be in league with him, and they know what he's doing, but that doesn't make any sense, because even Halbrand doesn't know what he's doing. The moth people talk like he's got a master plan, but by the opening sequence of season 2, it's clear he's making it up as he goes along. Nothing is planned out, and he just happens to keep succeeding along the way from plot armor. And plot armor is another major issue here. You could do prequels to things. Sure you can. You can involve characters that we see in the main story in a prequel. No problem. Like we saw Lord of the Rings first. Decade or so later, we got the Hobbit trilogy. It's a prequel for the films. Seeing Gandalf, Radagast, Galadriel, Elrond, and Saruman fight the Nazgul and Sauron was awesome, unique, and new. This show is painful because each episode is so long and so boring, and you know where everything is going to end. You know what has to happen, you know where this is going, and they don't make it interesting along the way. There isn't anything like that team up I just mentioned to make it worthwhile at all. King Gil-galad is not even a character in this show. He's just an obstacle. Karen the manager, police chief, turn your gun and your badge in, to Galadriel and Elrond. Every single time he appears on screen, I don't see Gil-galad. I see Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, and every minute feels like it's counting down to when Sauron kills him and Elendil at the last alliance of men and elves. But that's not gonna happen for like 18 more seasons. So it's going to be 117 more episodes of Gil-galad saying, "No, Galadriel, no, Elrond," and that is so boring. Celebrimbor is an idiot. In the books, he's super smart, considered one of the wisest elves, but here he falls so easily for Halbrand's manipulation Not because Halbrand is a good manipulator, but because Celebrimbor is a moron. There's a line in episode 2 where Celebrimbor says he doesn't want to make rings for men because men are covetous. That's the word he uses. That their desires would corrupt them. Well, I don't know how I'm supposed to process this information when actually 2 seconds ago, he was in tears of joy from crafting the rings after longing to make something worthwhile for centuries. He was willing to disobey orders from the king, and so easily falls for tricks from outsiders, again, not because they're convincing, but because he himself wants to craft these rings. He himself covets making the rings and is therefore corrupted by his own desires. Now, you could be all highbrow and say, well, it's media literacy, and that's the point. And I would say, okay, take a look at the Middle-earth video games from the 2010s. Those weren't that long ago. Celebrimbor is hyper-intelligent and written in a way to be an intellectual equal to Sauron that's after revenge. Both Rings of Power and Shadow of Mordor are fan fictions inspired by Tolkien's work, but one of those iterations of The Lord of the Rings is way more compelling than the other. I don't blame the actors here. I blame the writing and the directing. Celebrimbor is a feeble husk next to the video game version. Lastly, and before we finally get into episode 1, everything with not Gandalf and the Harfoots is so empty because it doesn't need to be there. Every time it cuts to them, I think of Game of Thrones and how Game of Thrones had multiple stories going on at the same time in different places with different characters. That's Nori and not Gandalf. What they're doing as far as the first 2 episodes of season 2 is entirely inconsequential. They're still playing on the mystery box of who this Istari is. And if you're in on the lore, you know that this should not be Gandalf. But the show plays him off so heavily as Gandalf, so you almost hope it is, because it will feel like a betrayal if it isn't. This is a double-edged sword mystery box. The audience wants to believe it's Gandalf, but you'll upset the fans of the books. But at the same time, the audience will feel betrayed if you rug pull them, and it's someone else after this guy has all the mannerisms of Gandalf. You see, it's a problem. It's stupid. Okay, let's talk about what happened in episode 1. We open on the castle with a secret ice troll inside and a new actor playing Sauron. He's commanding the orcs in the aftermath of Morgoth's defeat that he's going to lead them now. He's King Sauron, and he sounds like a typical would-be tyrant, and the orcs don't like him, so they kill him. Yes, Sauron gets Julius Caesared in the opening of season 2 by Adar, the father of the orcs, an entirely invented character for this show. At which point, King Sauron explodes into frost, which freezes the entire land, but somehow doesn't kill all of the orcs. And he turns into a Venom symbiote. We then watch a near 8-minute segment of Venom symbiote Sauron crawling around, trying to survive. He eats a rat, the bugs, eventually eats a whole woman, and regenerates into the Halbrand that we recognize. Now, remember how I said the idea of Sauron is more terrifying than the man himself? Well, now we've seen him reduced to an actual puddle of goop, and there aren't even any rings involved. I'd say you clipped his balls off, but you actually exploded them instead. Now you're supposed to believe that this guy goes from being a puddle of goop into the greatest threat in Middle-earth's history? The veil is broken. The ability to suspend disbelief is gone. Sauron was killed by his own orcs. Then we meet Wise Old Man, who drops platitudes for a few minutes about choosing your own path and making different choices. And it seems like Halbrand is opening up to these ideas of being different than he was, even confessing to doing evil and having almost a sense of regret about it. Well, firstly, that's no longer Tolkien Sauron, but while that could be an interesting take to explore, the idea of him feeling remorseful for his evil done, it's immediately ruined, as he leaves Wise Old Man to die in the shipwreck from Season 1 and takes the medallion that the old man has with that Southland's king sigil on it. Then we're back to Galadriel in modern day. Elrond wants to destroy the 3 Elvish rings upon finding out Sauron was involved with their creation, and Galadriel wants to keep them. Gil-galad is also there to wag his finger at the two, and there are no other Elvish advisors who have anything else to say on the matter. Galadriel, who now just about everyone knows was accidentally working with the ultimate enemy, still has as much arrogance as ever, with hardly a shred of regret. Gil-galad does not punish Galadriel or Elrond for disobeying him, ever. And we're back to Halbrand, who we last saw approaching Mordor in Season 1, who confronts Adar and eventually swears loyalty to. I'm pretty sure this is some form of setup for a conflict coming down the road, but otherwise there was no reason at all to go swear loyalty to Adar. It's obvious he's going to kill Adar at some point to become king over the orcs again, but why go there and talk to him other than to get the orcs more screen time? It makes no sense in the context of the episode alone, so I'm hoping that's resolved in the future, but my expectations are low. Then we get to Not Gandalf and the Harfoots, and I do mean Harfoots plural because Not Sam catches up and joins the team, so they can have the full Not Peter Jackson Hobbits team-up party. And nothing else important will happen with them, so we're done with them for this episode. Back to Halbrand and Adar, who says he's going to see Celebrimbor and stuff. I still don't understand why he went to Adar yet, so the key details don't matter. Regardless, he leaves to go see Celebrimbor. Back to the elves, Elrond goes to Círdan, the shipmaster, who is new to this season, but very important to the lore. He asks Círdan to destroy the rings, Círdan doesn't. Then Gil-galad, Galadriel, and Círdan put on the 3 rings, and the elf tree regrows its leaves. Elrond is wary of this use of the rings, but the elves think they're strong enough to control the power inside. And that's mostly the overview for episode 1 of Rings of Power Season 2. For those of you who don't know me very well, know that I don't have much patience. I don't, and I know it's a bad habit. I don't like movies that go over 2 hours and then don't earn those extra minutes. You can do great movies in 90 minutes, and you could do great television in 45 minutes. There's no reason for these episodes to be 1 hour and 16 minutes long. There are more minutes available now for Season 2 of Rings of Power than for the theatrical cut of The Two Towers. And a lot more happens in The Two Towers than anything in this boring TV show. Don't waste your time watching this. Myself and other YouTube channels will happily give you the breakdown you need right here. My friends, I want to thank you for joining me for this Rings of Power special pondering. If you would please like the video. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel. If you didn't like what I had to say, I don't really care. This show is awful. Until next time, create, innovate, inspire. May the force be with you. And for the love of God, cancel Disney Plus. Thanks.